All right, everyone, we're going to go ahead and get started. So if you can take your seats. And while we're waiting for our last few to take a seat, if it's been a little while since you've been in a public event, make sure you silence your phone. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. My name is Cinnamon Moffett. I am the Research Program Manager at Oregon State University's Hatfield Marine Science Center, which is located in Newport, Oregon, which feels a little weird if you're in the room, but for this event is actually a hybrid event. So we have folks that are online with us as well. For those folks that are online, we have our wonderful volunteer, Roseanne, in the room. Hi, Roseanne. She will help you with any technical issues you might be having. So just put those questions into the chat box, and she will help you navigate those. For those folks online, this is a webinar. That means you do not have camera or mic control. So again, that chat box is the way that you can put in questions for tonight's speaker as well. For folks in the room, thanks for being here. It's a beautiful, beautiful day in Newport, and we are excited for today's talk. When we get to the question and answer section of tonight's talk, we will need to hand around a mic. There's a couple of ways for us to do that. There's a mic that's sitting on the side of the room. You can go to that mic, or you can simply raise your hand and I'll bring this mic to you and you can watch me run around the room and make sure everybody gets a chance to ask questions. But that is the way that our online folks can hear your questions as well. But again, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it. Couple of quick announcements. This is our very first Science on Tap of this academic year. So thanks for helping us kick it off. We do these every single month. The date varies, but the time and location does not. So our next one will be in November. The date hasn't been set yet, but Suzanne Brander is going to be talking to us about some of the impacts and mitigation of microplastics in the ocean. So if you're interested in joining us for Science on Taps and you're not getting notifications now, there is a sign-up sheet over here that you can sign up on just to get notifications for Science on Tap and public events. Or you can go to the HMSC website, scroll down to the bottom, there's a calendar of events there, and you can find out all the information you need to join us either on site or online. But enough about all of that. For tonight, Daniel Palacios of the Marine Mammal Institute invited our speaker. So I'm going to hand this off to Daniel so Daniel can introduce our very excited guest.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. I'm Daniel Palacios with the Marine Mammal Institute here at OSU, and I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker tonight. National Geographic explorer Katherina Audley is the founder of and director of the Whales of Guerrero, a community-driven research, education, and training program based in southwestern Pacific, Mexico. She has participated in whale research and community building projects around the world since 1997 and learned how to inspire the public to engage more deeply with nature and the world around them while working at San Francisco's Exploratorium in the 1990s. A travel writer and photographer since 1995, Audley has been visiting, living, and working in the fishing village of Barra de Potosí and around the region since 1998. She has earned the trust and generated notable interest from the community in establishing long-term monitoring and responsible marine management measures as a result of her steady success in increasing ecotourism-related work opportunities. Maintaining a community-led approach to all scientific and other programs, and teaching more than 1,300 local youth every year about marine mammals and the importance of marine biodiversity. Her work with Whales of Guerrero has been featured in a replicable model by the United Nations and other organizations worldwide for its collaborative approach to marine conservation. As the Information and Technology Manager for the Society for Marine Mammalogy, which is another hat that Katherina wears, she works with all of the Society's committees to manage and achieve their communication and programmatic objectives. She also serves as on the Conservation Committee and Communication Committee for the Society. Audley is the vocal voice for North America for the Mexican Marine Mammal Society, or SOMEMA, and also advises the International Committee for Marine Mammal Protected Areas and the IUCN Marine Mammal Protected Area Task Force on communication strategy. On a more personal level, sometime in 2020, I was listening to the Marine Mammal Science podcast, which is a podcast that I listen to when I'm driving back and forth to Portland or whatever. And I heard this episode that was interviewing Katherina, and it was so engaging and interesting, and you'll get to hear about that in a moment. But I immediately went, oh, this is different. Someone's doing things differently here. This is something worth paying attention to. And I figured I got to meet her sometime. And then I think during the podcast, she mentioned that she lived in Portland. So I did reach out, and we started communicating after that. And a few years later, because of shared interest and so forth, we have stayed in touch, including working with the Society for Marine Mammalogy. But here she is tonight. So Katherina. And we do have a, on behalf of the Marine Mammal Institute, we have a hat for you.
Oh, thank you. Yay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Oh, it's got a whale on it. Good.
Yes.
Fantastic. I got this. So yeah, I'm good. All right. Hi, everybody. Hi, everybody online. I don't know where the online is, but hello. I'm Katherina, and I am the founder, as Daniel said, of a project called the Whales of Guerrero. And tonight I am going to teach you about a life-afflicting illness that affects thousands of people every year, including, I'm sure, many of you, called whale fever. So here we go. This is Sebastian. He's a young boy. He lives on a small village on the Pacific coast of Mexico. And as young as age 6, Sebastian displayed symptoms of whale fever, which included sparkling eyes, a wide grin, an attraction to salt water, and a heightened response to cetacean stimulus. These are the culprits, humpback whales. Who's seen a humpback whale here? Yeah, okay. So you know their size, they can be up to 60 feet long. That's about as long as a bowling alley. Their heads are covered in knobs, and each of those knobs have little hair follicles inside of them, meaning that they're mammals. Basically, they look like giant gray dill pickles that weigh 66,000 pounds, and we love them. So humpback whales in particular have these huge fins that are about the third the length of their body. They are the most acrobatic whale. They can jump all the way out of the water, and they sing. So they're amazing, amazing animals. I suffer severely from whale fever. Also, for me, I wasn't born this way. It was 1997. I was living in the Bay Area, and I was working in the science museum called the Exploratorium. And I was living right by the Golden Gate Bridge. And I started having dreams every night that I would walk out to the beach and swim under the Golden Gate Bridge. And in my dream, there were great white sharks all around. And when there were whales present, they would protect me from these sharks. There was something about them that gave me this clarity and this protection. And I would wake up from this dream and just think, whales, whoa. And there's whales out there. And I had never really thought about them. And then I thought, well, I think I need to see a whale. They're just out there, these mysterious aliens that are smart and intelligent. And so there wasn't much whale watching happening back in the 90s in San Francisco, but I saved up my museum workers' wages and I traveled out to the Farallon Islands. They're located about 32 miles off the coast of San Francisco. I knew nothing about the weather or conditions, so I stupidly went out in May, which is when it's super bumpy and choppy and foggy and cold and a kind of a miserable time to go whale watching, honestly. But I went out there on this boat and we banged all the way out to the Farallon Islands, and I'm so happy. And I'm just on the bow of the boat, king of the world, feeling hopeful. I'm going to see a whale. So we took 8 hours out there, and this is what we saw. So a smart person would have had this experience and been like, okay, whales, check, cool, onward. But for me, it hooked me for life. And what happened after seeing that whale was I became obsessed. And I spent every penny I could save up to volunteer and work and travel and be around whales. From that date moving forward, that was it. So I did spend time then traveling around the world, volunteering for everybody that would have me, getting to San Ignacio Lagoon and Hawaii and Peninsula Valdez and New Zealand, anywhere that was a whale hotspot. I was there, and that was my thing. I became a kind of a fangirl of whale scientists, and I just thought that was the most amazing job in the world. And I'm not a scientist, and so I didn't have these qualifications beyond being a volunteer to get into a whale boat or anything like that, but I am a writer. And so I tricked the scientists into becoming my friends by starting this magazine called Whoosh, the zine for whale lovers. And what I would do is I would call up scientists. I would find them on the internet and I would write to them and say, I would like to feature you in my zine, Whoosh, the zine for whale lovers. Would you be interested in an interview? And they usually said yes, because people like being interviewed and featured in magazines. And so I didn't have very many pictures of whales. And so I forced my dog to dress like a whale. I was really, really sick. So at the same time that I was falling in love with Mexico, whales, I was falling in love with Mexico. And this is the place that I was falling in love with. This is this little village, and it's called Barra de Potosí. And it's in the Southwest Pacific coast of Mexico, about 25 minutes south of Zihuatanejo. And this is where Sebastian comes from, that little boy. And there's about 700 other people that live there as well. So Barra de Potosí is a nature lover's wonderland. I had worked as a commercial fisherman at some point, and this was the fishiest place I'd ever been. I mean, you would get into the surf and the fish would whack your legs. You could just cast out and catch a fish, cast out and catch a fish, and drop a line and bring up a red snapper. I'd just never seen anything like it. And we would see humpback whales when I'd go out fishing. I would see sea turtles being born on the beaches. There were rays, there were birds. There were 8 ecosystems in this little 75-mile square radius. And I'd never been around so much wildlife. So every year I kept going back again and again and again. And I got to be friends with local people in the community who I would go fishing with and then go to their homes and eat with them. And I watched this place start to have a little bit of tourism. And then there was some cartel violence that was very well publicized, and H1N1 virus hit in 2010, and it decimated the tourism. And I watched this fishery go from being resplendent to being something tough, where I get out there and fish all day and maybe bring up a black tuna. And I saw that there was more petty crime. I saw that my friends were suffering. And so there was this overfishing happening. There was a lack of opportunities. So I saw this problem and I decided to make it my job to help. So my mission would be that I would use science to connect people with nature and kickstart conservation. And I would look at whales as a way that could potentially support ecotourism. I knew from traveling around the world that whale ecotourism can put whales in a lot of danger, but it can also really help a community. And it's a very, very delicate thing. So my idea would be that I would infect the community with whale fever like I had through exposure. I would support the local economy with some research jobs and some ecotourism. So as I said, I'm not a scientist, and I do believe that anybody can do science. And I knew we were going to do some great science because I had a whole bunch of science friends that I'd already tricked into interviewing who I could ask questions from. And so I knew these fishermen have a lot of good qualities like a scientist, and they knew the water. So together we would get out there and we would figure out what was out there, who was out there, what we had in the area, because no one had ever studied whales in our area before. So in 2013, I started the Whales of Guerrero research project. So our first question was, who's here in Barra? And this really surprised me because when I had worked in all of these whale hotspots and visited, it felt like there was like one scientist for every whale out there. And then there's this whole state and nobody knows anything about the whales. We didn't know if the whales were passing through, if they were coming here as a destination. We didn't know what kinds of other marine mammals there might be. So the idea would be we would get out there and we would take pictures of the undersides of their tails or their flukes. As you can see from these pictures, the undersides of humpback whale flukes are as unique as your thumbprint. And so we would get out there and get to know these whales. And by taking pictures of their flukes, that would allow us to start to begin to figure out who was here, how were they moving around, how were they using the space, and where did they go when they weren't with us. So being a science person that loves to work in the public with the museum and exploratorium, I had to make an exhibit immediately. So this is in the middle of the village of Barra de Potosí. There's like a 3-street by 3-street tic-tac-toe village. And I made a map and I made a calendar. So every day I'd go out, I'd take pictures of whales, and I'd come back and I would write down how many whales and mark on the calendar where it was. So it took about a week before the kids in the village are meeting me down on the boat and going, how many whales did you see? What was that like? So the boat very quickly went from, me having all the fun with my Captain Arturo to something a lot more like that. And so that's what the boat really started to look like pretty quickly. All right, let's talk about whales. This is Fran, and Fran's a really, really special whale to me. She was the 3rd whale I ever photographed. I took a picture of her in January 2014, and I took a picture of her with a calf. And when I took pictures this first year, I really didn't know what I was doing. I mean, I barely knew how to use a digital camera. That was a DSLR. And I get out there and try, and I get so excited, I would miss the shot. And so I've got this really horrible shot of Fran. But what I knew was this is a cow. She's got a baby with her, and that's what she looks like. Ta-da! So this is what we knew before starting the research in Mexico. We knew that humpback whales come down to Mexico and to Central America to mate. They come down there to calve, and they come down there to raise their young. We know that they go up north to California, Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia to eat. So they're not eating when they're down in Mexico, and that's what we knew. So we would use these humpback whale flukes, as I mentioned, as a kind of they're mug shots, right? And there's this amazing program. Who knows about Happy Whale? Yay. Okay. Happy Whale is amazing. Happy Whale is an automated fluke recognition system where you can take your pictures of humpback whale tails, you can upload them, and it automatically recognizes your fluke. And so then if it knows your whale, it tells you where it came from. So it's kind of like a, mugshot file for whales of the world. And so using Happy Whale, we were able to track the whale's roots and know where they came from and where they went. So turns out Fran loves having her picture taken. So she spent a lot of time around Monterey, and that most farther south picture is the picture that we took of Fran, and she'd been seen in Mexico a few other times as well. So my mind exploded when this happened, that I got to take a picture of a whale, come back and, look her up, and there she was, Fran. I had to go to Monterey to meet her myself since she tended to linger around there. So this is my Ussie with Fran. It was a really happy day for me. So that's Fran. Unfortunately, I think as some of you know, Fran had a really horrible end. So last year in August, her body washed ashore in Half Moon Bay, and she had been hit by a ship. So Fran, who was this very beloved whale that had hundreds and hundreds of people who had photographed her and uploaded her picture and had a very personal connection to her, were bereft at the loss of her. So news traveled around the world. I mean, at least 250,000 people learned about Fran's demise, and it really got people thinking about ship strikes. So we were very, very sad to lose Fran. And one of the things that I did is organized a reparation ceremony and a memorial for Fran in Moss Landing, the place where she liked to hang out the most. So we had this live painting. We got together at sunset, and the idea was to grieve together and also to commit to doing something so that this kind of thing wouldn't continue with her. Some Ohlone tribal members came, and they sang these beautiful ancient and sacred songs for Fran. And we had a bagpiper come and play as the sun went down. It was a beautiful, beautiful ceremony. And at the end of it, we also made personal, private commitments to doing more for whales, and beyond just being sad that this was happening. So one of the things that we did is the US Coast Guard had a proposal out to study port access between Washington and California. So because people were paying attention to Fran, we reached out and we got 192 people to comment on this port proposal study, and that may have helped to influence that then there was this voluntary vessel speed reduction zone that was put into place after we had put forth all of these comments from many, many, many different organizations, really emphasizing the importance of that. We also continue to work nationally and internationally with organizations to come up with new ways to keep whales safe. So Fran's death was terrible, but because she was a known individual and we all felt very connected with her, we have been able to keep this issue in the light and get people organized and moving toward being more vocal and aware and potentially even changing behavior. Okay, so what have we found out about whales? What we found out is that our area hosts two different groups of whales. We discovered that Barra de Potosí was a hub for one group of whales that's a distinct population segment that goes generally, we thought, all the way down to Central America. But it turns out that some of the whales are maybe a little bit lazy and they don't go all the way. They just come down to us, and they come down to us, they stick around, and then they head right back north again. So that's one group of whales that we've learned about. The other group is called the mainland Mexico whales, or the California, Oregon, Washington whales. So the Central America group tends to go up just to like Southern California, while the mainland Mexico whales will come as far north, even here to Oregon. So they tend to be around the Farallon Islands, even right under the Golden Gate Bridge. And they are seen off coast here in Oregon, about 5 miles off. I usually see them when I'm out there fishing, and you see them in Washington and in British Columbia. So our area turned out to be a hub for both of these different groups of whales. And the Central America group is a very tiny, genetically distinct population of whales, meaning that it's an important little group of whales to protect. So, and then you got your wanderlust whales, right? I mean, whales aren't tidy. So every time you say, oh, the whales go here, the whales go there, then you got your Russia whale and your Hawaii whale, the backpackers, right? So there's always those guys. So let's see. As we found that out, oops, we also all along the way presented all of our findings in real time to the community. So here's Sebastian, he's growing up. Sebastian's been living in our office. We have an open door office policy, and we live in the village completely integrated into the community. So he's a giant whale nerd. He jumps on the boat whenever he can, sure, but he also enters our data, he cleans our gear, he learns and learns and learns and learns everything that he can. So Sebastian learned to speak and present about whales, and here he is in the city of Zihuatanejo giving a talk at the local farmers market about something that we did with whales. So every time we learn something, the first people to know about it were the community, and everything that we discovered along the way was continuously being communicated out. All right, so these are the kinds of things that Sebastian talked about, and me too. Why? Let's back up. Why are whales traveling to these places? Well, up here, this is what the whales are doing. They're eating and eating and eating. So humpback whales eat krill, sardines, and anchovies, and they can eat 5,000 pounds a day of fish. So when they're up here, their breath is really stinky and sticky. And it's, you know, you get covered in it when you're out here, and I can smell whales before I see them when I'm out here. A lot of the time you can kind of smell if it's whaley out there. Down in Mexico, the whales don't stink. Their breath isn't sticky or stinky. And, you know, it's just, it doesn't have that whale smell out there as the way that it does up here. Up here, the whales have this lunge feeding behavior. So whales have culture, and these guys are not your bubble net feeders. They're out there. When you see them out here eating, they're going to be lunge feeding most commonly. So question, are the whales eating all the fish? Turns out 5,000 pounds of fish means a whole lot of whale poop. Whole lot of whale poop means a whole lot of source material to create more life, to create more fish. So the more whales there are, the more fish they're eating, the more poop they make, the more fish you get. So it's great to have whales around gobbling up all your fish. Now, they're not really eating down in Mexico. Every once in a while, they'll snack because they'll do what they'll do, but it's very, very rare. We still have never seen a whale eating in our area. What they are doing when they're down there that I don't see them doing up here as much is relaxing. So we see them getting really, really playful, and they love to play with each other. They love to play with other dolphins and things like that. So that's something that we do love to see a lot when we're down there. Another thing that we get to see a lot down there is singing. So singing was a big deal in our village. When we got there, people didn't know anything about whales. They were wondering if they laid eggs. The fishermen who spearfish, they were kind of scared of them. They were haunted by, they didn't know it was the whales that were singing. And so for me, getting my hydrophone out into the water was a way to get the fishermen to come out on the boat with me and safely hear the whales singing. And the first year, the kids, I would bring back recordings of the whale songs, and they were quickly riding their bikes around the village making these whale songs. So the whale songs were a real hook. And I mean, we got to listen for a minute. So let's just have a listen. All right. Oops. I don't know how to stop this. We might just listen to whale songs all night long now. Haha. Yeah. Technology. So humpback whales, they're the rock stars of the whale world. They sing in phrases. They sing in 4/4. Their song's about 20 minutes long, and they can sing for hours. So the song repeats phrase by phrase by phrase, but they're singing for hours, kind of like a jam band. So they're all singing the same song, and they teach each other this song, and then it changes every year a little bit like fashion. So that's, just stuff that we never really get tired of. And I'm not going to get into too much detail about that, but it's incredibly fun to think about, I got to say. Question, why do whales sing? People would think, well, they sing and they bring the female. But what we saw was that humpback whales do not bring a female when they sing. What we've noticed is we'll hear a whale, we'll find the singer, and then usually another male whale will show up, or maybe a few male whales will show up. And then they'll find a receptive female, and well, we'll get into that in a little bit. So let's get a little nerdy. Okay, this is Cuyo, or Abel. He's a local village guy. Didn't graduate from high school, but he's one of those techie guys. He likes technology just naturally. He can sort of fix a motor by thinking and looking at it. And so Abel decided he wanted his own hydrophone. So I printed him out. I found online a manual by Barra from NOAA. Abel does not speak English, and I printed out this manual and I gave it to him, and he went to town and he found pieces and he learned to solder and he built this hydrophone, and it actually works. So I present to you the most Mexican hydrophone in the world. Totally works. And this is Abel holding his hydrophone. I mean, look at that look. He is so proud of himself, and he should be. He built a freaking hydrophone. So, this is what was happening while we were out there collecting information about whales, is people are getting empowered and excited and wanting to do things like build hydrophones so they can listen to their own whales without me having to be there. All right, so going back to the singing, when a whale sings, this is what happens after the whale sings. You get big fights. And so this is a heat run. So this is a group of whales that have gotten together, and they're chasing a whole bunch of one receptive female, and the other guys are battling it out, following behind the female. They're hitting each other with their fins, with their tails, they're trumpeting, they're blowing, they're super macho. So let's see. This is my team freaking out about a heat run. Oh, I want to give you some sound on that. No? Huh. Yeah. Ah, there we go. Okay, cool. All right. So this was a funny day because I had just made the pronouncement, which always gets me in trouble. The team was like, "Have you ever seen a heat run?" And I said, "Yeah, but I don't think they happen here." And so then the whales said, "Hold my beer," and we got a heat run. So really great day. This is the first time. So note that bird out there flying on top of those whales. There's about 13 of them out there. You're going to see them in a sec. It's a good day. Okay, so this is the result of the heat runs. 13 months later, you get yourself a 20-foot, 2-ton bundle of joy. So moms come down, they come down pregnant, they mate and calf in the same spot, and the baby, they're going to come back and they're going to give birth in the same place year after year. So kind of like human moms going to the same hospital and, you know, choosing to have the same doctor again and again. So whale moms are kind of like the ultimate parental sacrifice thing. You know, they come down, they're really, really fat. They fast the whole time. They lose about half their body weight. The babies are nursing and they're eating about 150 gallons a day of milk, which is 35 to 50% fat. So it's really more like margarine. And the babies are pushing on the mammaries that are back at the ends by the tail. She's expressing her milk and the baby's gobbling it up. And there she is fasting the entire time. So let's just take a little look at these whales and have a moment. So they're pretty great. So we get videos like that of our drone and we bring it back to the village and we put it up on the kindergarten wall at night. And I mean, when you get to see that kind of thing, it really changes the way that you want to be around a whale. And so these kinds of this kind of footage and information that we've gotten and giving this information to local people has helped people to prioritize not stressing out the whales and knowing that they're in a really special place with the whales. And they also have learned that the whales do have to survive quite a gauntlet in order to get back north to their feeding grounds. One of the things that whales have to face is the risk of crab pots. So we studied our whales and we found that up to a third of the humpback whale tails in our area have a scar that is around the tail that looks like it could very likely be caused by being entangled in a crab pot like this. So this was some work that we did over a 4-year period where we analyzed our flukes and or our the caudal whole length of the whale tail, shared it with NOAA, and then that information was used to make some decisions about what would happen with the crab fisheries in California. So the data that we found about our little distinct population segment of humpback whales and how much they were becoming entangled with crab pots helped to get California to change the fishery laws. So when the humpback whales are down with us in Mexico in the summertime, that's when crabbing is happening. And then when the whales are back up north And it's the summertime, that's when California's not crabbing at this point in order to keep the whales safe. So that's a really wonderful applied science victory. There's lots of good news about humpback whales, really. I mean, humpback whales, they're not an endangered animal. They are endangered little population segments, but the groups have been recovering since the 80s when commercial fishing stopped for the whales. And our area where we are in Mexico really understands that when the whales win, everyone wins. And that's been something that we say and we reinforce over and over and over. So the whales are doing well, and that's helping the ocean, which is in trouble. So in Barra, what we've done is we have this whale training program where we teach every year safe whale watch training programs, and the captains become authorized whale guides. And they get very bonded together during this 2-day training program that we do. And then they get connected, and they have a WhatsApp group that helps them to tell each other when there's whales around. And they have, over the past years, become the frontline defenders of the ocean. So they've gone out, and when there's tuna boats that are catching dolphins by mistake, they're the ones that are acting. When there's shrimp boats and they're too close, they're the ones that are acting. When there's people that are not authorized whale watch captains and they're getting too close to the whales, they're the ones that are out there. And right now we're working with the community to organize an official guide-led monitoring and vigilance program, as it's an El Nino year this year. So we're expecting that there will probably be fewer whales, great pressure on the whales, and we are feeling that we do need to get something in place. So what we're working on at this point is getting these fishermen supported so that we can have an official monitoring and vigilance program that's guide fueled, and we will be the ones to help them sort of create the framework for that program. Another nice thing that we've seen happen over the past 10 years is there's a lot less pollution and a lot less plastic than there used to be. We're seeing that the beaches, people are doing many more beach cleanups these days. It's becoming harder and harder to find a plastic bottle floating out on the sea. There's less use of single plastic going on. And so all of these are kind of just things that have been happening as a result of putting the whales in the community in the driver's seat. Okay, and so our kids programs have really grown. I mean, these are early day pictures, but these days I have a team, and my team is great at working with kids. And so every year we now teach 2,000 kids. We bring about 250 kids out onto the water, and we do weekly workshops. We have a weekly science club in both Zihuatanejo and in our village, and we have events. And then we do have this continuous open door policy where kids can come in. So as a result, a lot of these kids have grown up and now they are becoming scientists. One of them just graduated with a degree in biology. Another one has become a veterinarian. They're moving along. And even those that aren't getting into becoming a guide or a naturalist or a job in science, they're very, very connected to nature in a way that we haven't really seen before. So in 2018, we finished our study theoretically, but now we're 10 years in. And we had a village meeting to say, okay, we've started safe whale watching in the area. Now what? What do you want to do? We've got ecotourism going. We've got some whale watch going. What do you want to do? And the women said, they came to the meeting from the community and were like, we want to do stuff. We don't want to be whale guides, but we want some opportunities. And the kids said, give us more education. Like, what are you going to do? If a kid's like, teach me, you know, you're not going to be like, no, I'm not going to teach you. Of course, you're going to make education programs for the kids. So we got really into that and followed the community's request and lead and started working more deeply with the women. The women, we took them on a learning exchange to Oaxaca, and they came back and wanted to start to do a mangrove restoration program. They became walking tour guides, and we also began taking the women out to sea. And many of the women had never been on a boat before, even though they live on the ocean, and they had definitely never seen a whale before. Another thing that the women now do is they teach cooking classes. And so I always love going to people's houses and cooking with them. And now the women get to open their doors to other people, and they come down to the village now, and the women teach people how to make tortillas on the comal, and they get to have this really beautiful multi-generational experience in the family and have a good time together. And the women make some good money at it. We've also been supporting the women as artists. Over the years, they become better and better artists, and we have village art fairs. And during COVID, we had gotten some funding to get some paint to make some murals, but then we all got kind of stuck. And so the women took that quiet year and completely festooned the village with murals. And so now when you go to Barra de Potosí, there are beautiful murals on people's homes and all over the village. Let's see. And this is Sebastian. So here's Sebastian in 2019. He's still planning on being a marine biologist when he grows up. He works for a turtle camp down the road now called Acampamento Ayocali. And here he is measuring an olive ridley sea turtle that's hauled up to lay eggs on the beach. And just this last January, I had this just beautiful, beautiful moment where it was the middle of the night and somebody called and they said that a leatherback had hauled out onto the beach. And I had never seen a leatherback before. It's very rare that they come up. And that's Sebastian in the middle of the action. I grabbed a bunch of women in the village. It's 4 in the morning and we all went running out to the beach to see this beautiful giant leatherback laying eggs. And that's Sebastian excavating the eggs super carefully, one by one, and bringing them back so that they can incubate out of harm's way from the scavengers. So that's kind of the story that I've got for you, and a few of the lessons that I've learned along the way that I think are things that I can share with you are that you do not need to be a biologist or really have any special skills to make a big difference in the world. And I think that that's something that I would like for all of you to take home with you and to share and know. For me, it's about whales because I never get tired of thinking about them, and it's about Mexico. But it doesn't have to be about whales, and it doesn't have to be about Mexico. It's just about picking your passion and thinking about what you're good at and using your good and your passion in a way that's going to help the world be a better place. No time, you got some money. Donations are what keep little organizations going. So like we live on donations, and there's lots of little organizations like us around the world. And that's a really, really big way to make a difference as well. Okay, another lesson learned, let the community lead the way in determining priorities. And if you want to have long-term impact, let the community tell you what to do and guide you along and do what they say. And then I think the most important thing that I've learned is to set people up around you to be champions of nature and to be winners and to look for the heroes in people and show it back to them that that's what you see in them. And if you set people up for that kind of success, then that people will usually step up and act that way. So that's what I've got. If you're feeling the fever, there's a mailing list over there. So we have an adoption program. You can come down and visit. There's all kinds of opportunities. So I'd love to be in touch with you. There's lots of opportunities to be involved in our organization and see how we move along. And now I'm here for your questions. So I'm Katherina Audley. This is the Whales of Guerrero. And there's a QR code if you want to get involved. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing with us. We're going to open the floor to questions. We're actually going to start with those questions online. Roseanne, do you have a question for us?
Yes, I have one. You've done a great job in Mexico and here this evening. Thank you for coming. What percentage of your budget is the result of donations?
Oh, I think probably 65% of our budget is donations, and the rest comes from little grants and a little bit of sponsorships and then some ecotourism.
Great. Questions in the room? Oh, you're going to let us off the hook. Roseanne, do you have any other questions online? All right. If you have questions online, go ahead and put them into the chat for folks in the room. One second. Sorry.
I thought they were going back and forth over to Hawaii, this type of whale.
Wait, where did you think they were going back and forth to?
To Hawaii.
Oh, yeah. So the whales that go to Hawaii go from Alaska to Hawaii. And then the whales that we see off the coast of Oregon tend to come up and back. But then remember, there's always those aberrant backpacker whales, you know, the
So
globe-trotting hippies.
Where do they feed up in Alaska?
Up in Alaska, well, they feed around where Juneau and Yakutak, and there's a Sitka. Yep.
Will it affect them if it quits freezing up there? I
With
mean,
what?
the growth of their food, will it change if it warms up, the ocean warms up
Oh,
there?
almost certainly. I mean, that's a problem that whales face is as the climate is changing and the ocean's moving, you get these changing of the food sources. And so sometimes a whale will show up in a place and then the food isn't where they think it's going to be. I mean, the good thing about humpback whales is they're really, really resourceful and a bit more flexible than other whales, but that doesn't mean it's not really hard on them too. Yes, they are.
So the question was whether they're baleen whales. Roseanne, I think you have another question for us.
Yes, do you accept volunteers from the US? Or are you looking for volunteers in Mexico? What kind of experience would I have as a visitor to your group?
Okay. So we do not have the bandwidth to support US volunteers. What we do is I'm the only foreigner on my project, and everybody else, we hire 50% local people, and then we hire 50% early career Mexicans, and I pay my whole team. So we don't do volunteer program, but instead we find that it works out better if everybody's able to earn a living by working on our project. And so it costs more, but the long-term impact is people are able to work, and people who come from without many financial resources are able to have these opportunities. We do sometimes have expeditions where there'll be a week long. We're not doing one in 2024, but we will do one in 2025. So that's about that mailing list over there. You can go on our website and sign up. And when we do have expeditions, they're really amazing. We go out and we do a little of everything. We get out and we do turtle releases, and we cook with the women, and we go on the walking tours, and we also go out and we study the whales a whole bunch. And so people coming and doing that, it's a really fun and organized way to do it. Another way to do it is to just come down to Barra de Potosí and come on vacation, and then look us up. I mean, it's a little village. Everybody knows like where we are and what I'm wearing, and if I got a new pair of flip-flops. It's like that, you know, and it's not just me, it's a village. So you can show up and look for a certified whale watch guide. And if you want an English speaker on board, then one of our team usually volunteers to serve as a translator. But what we do is, instead of us being the stars of the show, we really put the captain forward, and we serve as a translator and let the captain shine with their knowledge and information. Any other questions?
Yeah, I've got one about, I appreciated the work that you're doing with the entanglement with crab traps and things. And it sounded like you indicated that there was a shift in the seasons, perhaps to minimize some of that. And I'm guessing it depends also on which whale species, gray whales versus humpbacks, where these things occur. I'm really glad to see that somebody's looked into being able to figure out, is there kind of a fingerprint for it, and can we understand the evidence for it? But really my question to you is, where do you see things going on that, or where do you see some bright spots perhaps in the discussion with the fishing industry and in technology, and how's that conversation? Where do you see that going?
Well, that's a giant and great question that I don't have a lot of information about. But I can tell you, when I talk with colleagues who are based up here in the US, and we talk about entanglements and we talk about ship strikes, there are people doing incredible work. I mean, one organization is Point Blue Conservancy, and there's great work going on at the Marine Mammal Center, where people are very, very deeply addressing these issues and working with them. What I hope to see is we're starting to talk about a tri-national agreement between Canada, the US, and Mexico that will put regulations, not just recommendations, and voluntary suggestions about speed and where shipping lanes are located. So that's, I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get some laws in place in the north. But what I've learned in Mexico is that laws don't work as well as community buy-in. And so where we are, we don't have a big entanglement problem at this point. It could happen, but I think that if the community's in the driver's seat and they have a strong sense of ownership and they have a lot of motivation and they have the tools and they have the capacity and they have other options, that's the best way that you can go in terms of keeping the animals safe locally where you are. Let's see, what else do I want to say about that? I think that's about it. Yeah.
I'm going to hand the mic back to Daniel from the Marine Mammal Institute.
Thank you. It's a related question, and in your bio, it says that your model is being now replicated by the United Nations. So I wanted to hear more about how that's going. What are you doing in that regard? I do appreciate the value of what you're doing, especially in other economies where you go to places that they're very low in resources. And therefore, when a scientist comes from a more affluent place, the contrast is really stark in terms of, this person with education and so forth, and lots of resources coming and telling a community what to do. But then, they usually leave. And what you're doing is that you're leaving something that is much more permanent in the community. So I see the great value in that, having sort of lived and witnessed some of that. So I'm curious about what else are you doing? What's in the future for maybe translating this model or replicating it in other places? I understand you've been in Africa recently, maybe, I don't know. So thank you.
Yeah, I did just get back from Kenya, and it was the best, one of the best experiences of my life to get to share what we do in Mexico over with Kenya, because Mexico and Kenya have a lot in common culturally. And we're different enough that we can kind of get this objectivity idea around it. But the conversation was around community-based and community-driven marine conservation and how to work well inside of communities to motivate and inspire lasting change. And so being able to have these conversations inside of communities and share what's worked and what hasn't worked for us was incredibly rewarding. So tomorrow I'll be giving a talk in the afternoon, a seminar about lessons learned and mistakes I've made along the way. And so in that talk, it'll be a reveal all about a lot of these things that I've learned that I think can be replicated in terms of doing it the right way. And in terms of replicating, that word makes me cautious, and I understand where it's coming from, because culturally, people are people, but people are also motivated differently depending on where they come from. And so what we've seen is I teach my program in seminars and to little groups of people, and I bring in, when people come and work for me and my team, I hire highly emotionally intelligent people. And I can teach skills, but I can't teach personality. And so I look for people that are hard workers who are highly emotionally intelligent. And they come and I teach them everything that they need to know in terms of skills, or I hit up my scientist friends if they know something that I don't, so that we can do that. And then those people go out and they spark movements in other places. And so as a result, there are now whale programs and other marine wildlife and conservation programs that are taking place around Mexico and also in Central America and other places in the world that are following our approach and using our materials and basically following our philosophy. We didn't start the idea of community-based stuff, but we've been really committed to it for about 10 years, and we walk our talk. And I think that that's made a really big difference in just being there over time. So sometimes I think about, writing a book or making a curriculum or a playbook or something like that. But I think that there's got to be, I have a commitment to this area that I can't leave now. And I can eventually. And when I go, when my time comes, the community will continue on without me. And that's incredibly rewarding for me to know that this work isn't going to end with me where I started. But thinking about how to pass on the information is something that I'm just starting out doing. Yeah.
Thank you. Roseanne, do you have a question online?
Yeah, what was your career path like to get this amazing job? What opportunities should a student look for when wanting to pursue a similar type of career?
Well, I made it all up. I don't know. I have the most random career path. I have been a go-go dancer. I've been a timeshare salesperson. I've been a commercial fisherman. I've been a museum lady. I've been a waitress. I have had a lot of different jobs. And all of those jobs taught me very valuable things to this path that I've led myself to. And I think what really worked for me in my 20s was to surround myself, like at the Exploratorium, I went and I had so much hubris and I was an omniscient 20-year-old, right? And I walked into this place, this Museum of Science, Art, and Human Perception, and it seemed like everybody was smarter than me, and they were really nice, and they were really generous with their information. And I thought, if I work here, I'm going to learn how to work with people. And if I want to make something big happen, I can't do it by myself. I'm going to have to learn to work in a larger group. And so these people I respected enough to make me shut up and listen and get really humble. And I resented it because they made me work in accounting and they made me work in research and evaluation. And I didn't want to be doing any of that. I wanted the sexy jobs. But now I use Excel every single day, and I use research and evaluation. I do tons and tons of interviewing and design and analysis, and all of that comes from these jobs that I really resented when I was younger. And when I hire people on my team, I don't tend to hire people that have a straight science job. I look for people that have worked in retail. I look for customer service experience, and I tend to like working with people who come from a middle-class background. And so what I found is there isn't really a wrong career path. I think the way to do it is to figure out what you are curious about and then figure out what you're good at that doesn't wear you out, but that gives you energy to do, and then focus on that and forgive yourself if you need to change that. You're not doing anything wrong. And then you get to this wonderful place in life where, I started this project, I'm 51 today. I started this project when I was 40. And so, I couldn't have started this project when I was 20 because I just didn't have I wasn't personally developed enough to be able to do it to bring the humility that I needed into it. And it probably wouldn't have worked. So for me, the great gift of my life is that I was able to take this incredibly eclectic background of working and living around the world in very, very crappy jobs and combine it into something that feels very, very wonderful. So, and that's what I wish for a lot of people, is that we take our very specific and unique and individual interests and skills and we combine them together towards something that makes things a little bit better. And I think that if enough of us do that, we can really make a difference.
Wonderful. Yeah. We've got time for 2 more questions, so I'm going to hand it off to you.
Well, after that, my question just doesn't seem important anymore. I just wondered if there's any problems with other illegal fisheries around your village, around Guerrero, which have impacted the whales. In the way that vaquita are impacted, for instance.
Right. Yeah. I think about that all the time. Like, what would happen if a totoaba swam through? I can't say that if a fish worth $10,000 came through, if everybody would, fight to save the dolphins where we are, it's what I can do is say, like, the shrimp boats were a real problem. And the first years that I was there, and the shrimp boats tend to be run by the cartels, and they come from outside. They come from Sinaloa. And so we couldn't do anything about them. And we would see shrimp boats, and then we would see dead and dizzy turtles for a while. And we would see no fish. And it was terrible, and there was nothing that we could do. But the people that work in cartels are people too. And like the people there in the village, like everybody's connected to cartels in some way. And the kids that are coming to our workshops and the women, and they're all connected. And so now there's this priority to keep the wildlife safe because there's an important ecotourism element of it. And so there's a natural tendency. And these days, the shrimp boats are not coming in front of our village anymore. And they're staying out of the way. And it's just been something that's happened over time without violence or any kind of hitting thing. And I don't think that we've solved anything, but that's something that I've noticed. I mean, something we'd love to see would be to have we don't see a lot of net injuries on the dolphins, and we don't see a ton of predation of dolphins on the nets, but we have seen our bottlenose dolphins disappear. So nobody had studied the dolphins before, and because we've been studying every marine mammal in the area, we saw the population of bottlenose dolphins go from something that we saw every day very coastally in the reefs to something that maybe we saw a few every season. And we also saw that the bottlenose dolphins had a disease that was a lobomycosis-like disease. So if you watch Game of Thrones, it's kind of like grayscale, and it's terrible. It's just horrible. They get this, the dolphins get this terrible fungus, and it just takes over their bodies, and eventually it can kill them, and it can be transmitted to people. So that's caused by pollution. So we're not seeing the bottlenose dolphins coming back. And I don't think that the fishery is still doing very well. So we'd like to see it get better. And our neighboring communities are using line only and not net. But we're also not seeing fish get, or whales and dolphins get tangled up in the nets. Last year was a really good year for the fishery, and I don't know why, but it seemed like there were a lot more fish, and we also had our first entanglements. So, I mean, I'm thinking this is great. We have hardly any whale entanglements in our area, but one of the upshots of having a recovering fishery, which is what happened last year, is for the first time we got whales that were entangled in nets, and we don't have any training to learn how to deal with that. So this was a kind of unexpected problem that, you know, oh, now we might have to be facing entanglements if we are seeing a recovering fishery. So it's never boring.
All right, we're going to take another question from online.
Yeah, I have a few comments. Thanks a lot for allowing the Latino community to be involved in such important projects. Local people are essential. We're all very blessed that you're in this field and the way you're spreading these values. Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. Any last thing you want to wrap up with, Katherina?
I don't think so. Is there any other questions, or no?
Well,
Happy birthday.
you said today you turned 51.
Oh, no,
but I think you're
it's not my
51
birthday
now.
today, but I'll take it. Happy birthday. Thank you, everybody.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I hope to see you next month at our next Science on Tap. And if you didn't get enough of Katherina today, we are going to do a seminar tomorrow at 3:30 in the same room, and everyone is welcome to come back if you'd like. So thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Sign up for my mailing list.
Okay, for folks online, we're going to end the presentation now. Thanks for being here.